right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Eternal Weekend is creeping up on everyone, and this is going to be my last video before Eternal Weekend US. I thought it would be cool to go over some of my best suggestions when it comes to sideboard cards and Legacy, and kind of how I view the flexibility versus having very targeted sledgehammers for different matchups. I actually think the metagame has evolved to a place where diversity is the name of the game. We're looking at lower reanimator stake of the format that widens the format. We see Sneak and Show on a comeback. We see Mystic Forge looming. We see Ritual Combo winning tournaments. We see Eldrazi on a little bit of an uptick. We see Mono Red being a big player. So with all of that combined, let's try and make sense of the format through the lens of versatile sideboard cards. And I've prepared 8 of them. So let me try and sell you guys on those cards. So first up, we have Consigned to Memory. So this card is an amazing card against Eldrazi. Eldrazi is probably going to be an 8% deck at Eternal Weekend. And this card has recently gotten a lot of relevant crossover. So let's just start with the obvious one, which is Mystic Forge. This card is just super solid. Counters your opponent's One Ring, counters a Karn, counters a Kozilek's Command, even gets around Vexing Bauble. So that's just awesome. Against Eldrazi, you know, counter a Thought-Knot Seer, counter a trigger from a Myco Spawn, counter a trigger from the big 7-drop, counter a Chalice, whatever the case may be, even counter a Chalice trigger sometimes if you're able to replicate it. So Consigned to Memory is going to have a lot of crossover. Maybe your deck can afford to bring it in against Doomsday. Maybe your opponent can afford to bring it in against like Sneak and Show, countering Bauble, One Ring, and Atraxa triggers. It's a pretty cool card. And it's a staple. I mean, it shouldn't surprise anyone, but I just wanted to mention some of the other uses of the card. Against some like LED, Echo of Eons decks, it's also solid. Counters Bauble, LED, counters, you know, Chrome Mox. It's good against Mono Red Prison even, countering, you know, the One Rings. Once again, countering Baubles. Countering some triggers from something like Paragoyf is also serviceable. So yeah, that card is probably better than you think, and you probably already thought it was good. Let that one sink in. As we move to the next card. Pithing Needle, a card when it came out, it saw, I would say, too much play. I remember this card was just, oh wow, you can needle anything, but in reality, not that much things are worth needling, but enough of those things are seeing play right now. So the main motivation for me to play Needle right now is the uptick of Nadu. I think it's very strong there, naming the Nomad, and it can also name the One Ring in different matchups, sometimes names Urza Saga, it can name Grindstone against Painter, it can name Sneak Attack, it can name a lot of very, very useful things. I can even see draws against the Mystic Forge where, you know, they use that one like a key to untap a monolith, and then this is all of a sudden some kind of mana disruption spell. So a lot of flexibility in different matchups, and I like the first copy a lot in a lot of sideboards. With that being said, let's move to Disruptor Flute, which is both a needle, so it's good against all the stuff I just talked about, and it's going to be good against some combo decks. I would say Doomsday is the most obvious one, where if you make Doomsday be a 6-mana card, that's just going to buy a ton of time. I've even had a game where my opponent went Personal Tutor Doomsday. I played Ancient Tomb Pass out of my Mystic Forge deck. Then the opponent went land, Cabal Ritual, and then I responded to the Cabal Ritual by casting Disruptor Flute. My opponent had to pass the turn, and it was, not a good day at the office for my opponent. So this card is mainly going to be playable out of big mana decks maybe that already has Chalice of the Void, so 1 mana is annoying. Maybe you have Ancient Tomb, so you can more easily get to 2 mana. So that's kind of the space where I see Disruptor Flute do its best work. Then we have Dismember. So Dismember is basically a colorless card. So if you have a deck that doesn't care too much about the life loss, a deck that would like a removal spell for stuff like, you know, Troll, Metamorphosis Fanatic, Lelia, Magus of the Moon, Thought-Knot Seer, Nethergoyf, I guess Psychic Frog, make your opponent discard 4 cards. This card is just super solid at, you know, doing a very versatile job, even killing like Nadu, Nomad, Delighted Halfling. The list goes on. Like, creature removal is good, and 1-mana creature removal is even better. So I love Dismember, but there's kind of a cap on how many you can play and in which decks you can play them. And, you know, I think it's quite decent. I love that it kills Troll of Casa Doom. It does not kill Psychic Frog and Murktide Regent reliably, but it kills a lot of other things, including the Fleshraker actually out of Mystic Forge. So I love that card, and you should probably be thinking about that card even more for your deck. Next up, we have Graf Iger's Cage, which is historically a, 1-mana Leyline of the Void when Reanimator is good in the format. I remember some Delver decks played it like a year ago, but these days we have crossover from, shutting down the graveyard out of Reanimator decks, which is useful in its own right. This time around, we have different Green Sun Zenith decks. Some are, black-green Cradle Control, some are Nadu decks, and we even have the Nadu deck, like kind of the Elves version with even Natural Order and Court of Calling on top. So this card is really strong. I will say, if you play it out of your blue-black tempo deck, just know that you're shutting down your own Netherglyphs. It should be fine compared to the upside, but it's just something to think about. We're also shutting down our opponent casting Echo of Eons from the graveyard. We're also shutting down Oops All Spells completely, which is actually a big one, because Oops All Spells has evolved into beating stuff like Fairy Macabre and Ghost Vacuum quite easily with their Jack-O-Lantern and the Shuffler. So I love Graf Iger's Cage with the meta development we're seeing, with Nadu and Oops All Spells in particular. Then we have Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer is, it's not really a controversial one, but I think there are enough Force of Will decks in the format, there are enough Thoughtseizes running around, that this card is just going to be super solid. Decks these days don't really have a perfect plan to board out all their Force of Wills against your, green deck, so this is going to have a lot of mileage. I sometimes call it the 1-mana Cryptic Command, and I think this card is awesome as, a 1 or 2 of. Next up is Thoughtseize, which is actually the more main deckable card out of this list. Thoughtseize is basically a way for me to say that the format is so diverse, and Thoughtseize is going to be serviceable against most of decks, right? If you cast a turn 1 Thoughtseize on the play, you're going to be happy against any deck. There's no deck where you're like, oh, this is terrible. So this is more a kind of a proof that the format is doing quite well when it comes to diversity. Sometimes you take, your opponent's Entomb so they don't combo you out. You take your, sneak attack, or you take your opponent's, One Ring. But sometimes you just go for bread and butter, take the removal spells so you can resolve a frog, or take their frog because you're kind of soft to that card. And you get a lot of information that you can sculpt your game plan around. So Thoughtseize, I would say the more comfortable you are with Legacy, the better a card like Thoughtseize is probably going to be in your hands. So love that card. To round out the list, we have Hydroblast. Hydroblast used to be like a very anti-mono red card that had utility against, blue-red Delver, Grixis Delver, Temur Delver, whatever, because, channelers, blasts, bolts, and that was kind of your reason to play this card. These days, the reason to play this card is, for sure, the uptick in mono red, but now we have to think about what else does it do. So, first of all, let's clear what it does in the mono red matchup. It deals with any red threat on the stack and kills a lot of red permanents in play. Okay. They don't play Chalice of the Void anymore. They play Vexing Bauble. So in this era, it's even more important to have Disruption that actually costs mana, and it's going to be reliable. There's no Chalice of the Void to ruin your day. So first of all, it's now better against Mono Red, and Mono Red is a 7 to 8% deck, and it's going to be that at Eternal Weekend. So awesome card. Well, the list goes on here. Sneak Attack is trending. I'll guess it's like a 3 or 4% deck at Eternal Weekend. Counter Sneak Attack, counters Pyroblast out of the sideboard. Okay, that's pretty decent. Painter, same thing, 3 or 4% deck. It's going to counter all the goblins. It's going to counter Fable. It's going to, maybe win a counter war against the Pyroblast. Awesome. And we have actually various, Burning Wish, Gamble decks trending from, variations of Storm, basically. Whether it's like Ruby Storm, the Epic Storm, A&T, whatever you want to call it. Hydroblast has a lot of utility across the board. And then if you add in like the 1% Jeskai deck with, Forthialingus and Pyroblasts, all of a sudden you actually have a very, very well-rounded card for the cost of 1 mana. So when you look at this list, this is just a way to make your sideboard just have way more mileage. And look at this, 1 mana, 1 mana, 2 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana. So this is basically just me trying to say that the cheaper your card is, the better. And if you can hit more Birchwood on stone, even better, right? So I thought I wanted to get this video out there. Just some piece of inspiration going into Eternal Weekend, trying to win the most important Legacy tournament of the year. And I think this should be good inspiration for everybody to just at least think about making their sideboard a tiny bit more versatile versus, using the most specialized cards, like let's say Null Rod or Dark Betrayal or Fairy Macabre. Like then maybe we're supposed to play, Needle and Cage and Hydroblast instead of those cards, right? at least that was my message for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know if I missed anything. I started thinking about different cards, and then I thought I would end the number at 8. I thought, Magic players love top 8s, so that's what I wanted to do today. And please feel free to add anything in the comment. It's always cool to read. I read all comments. I'm here to get better, and hopefully so are you. And let's make a great community together. And last message. I just want you guys to have a ton of fun in Eternal Weekend. It's basically a celebration of the game we all love. So definitely go there and have a good time. And I'll be watching from the booth. And if you do well, I might feature you guys in the Legacy portion. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you after the weekend.